And welcome to 3D Scanned Avatar Props. It's so good to have all of you in here today. Oh, before we begin, some very important questions. Why are you here? You are here to learn how to take something real and bring it into VR chat for a prop on your person. We're going to do that by 3D scanning. What is 3D scanning? 3D scanning is a subset of the science of metrology. Oh, I might say photogrammetry, I might say metrology, I might say 3D scanning. They're all interchangeable here. What we're doing today is we're going to take a lot of pictures of something. We're going to feed it those pictures through special software that will match them up and create a three-dimensional an object. A computer object of the thing you scanned. And then how can you get some of that? We're going to talk about it. First off, what have I done with 3D scanning? Well, I have amassed a large collection of hand scans, partly because humans are challenging to 3D scan. And also because one of those hands is mine, and I've taken that model into Blender. I took all those photos on a sewing mat. Really, I used it because it was a nice neutral color and it was scaled in inches, very clearly marked. So in Blender, I could scale that object to real world units, inches. And then I could get a human hand skeleton model, add some claws, use my hand to cut out some detail and line them all up with my hand for some bone hands or fursuit. As a skeleton, fursuit options are kind of limited for me, but they fit on a nice skin-tight glove perfectly, and they make delightful clattering sounds whenever I do anything with those on. What else have I done with 3D scanning? I've worked on the Virtual Forensics project. I processed a lot of image sets that they took. First step was take pictures of the whole convention space, then make 3D models out of them, 3D scanned models out of them. Though none of those models actually made it into the final result because they were to be used as really accurate scale reference for the modeling team. And what I've learned from working on that project is, well, VR Forensics is a pretty fun convention. I've been there, it was a lot of fun. And what it taught me was, even at a furry convention, you can't escape anime. It's always there, lurking in the background, ready to get you. But with 3D scanning, you can capture it. You can contain it for the rest of the con, and it'll probably have fun while it's put away inside your camera. What I've also done with it is, recently I've been working too much, and I've been staying at a lot of hotels, so I can't 3D scan things like I normally do, don't have the time. I can 3D scan the hotel rooms. And I've learned a disturbing secret. All hotel rooms are actually the same. They're all connected. It's the same room everywhere. There's one hotel in the world and it's all the same room. Eventually I'm gonna have soon actually, I will have enough of these hotel room scans to make a whole VR chat map that is just nothing. It's a hotel of nothing but hotel rooms from different hotels. I use an app for my phone called Polycam, and I use the LiDAR scan function in it on my iPhone to just very quickly capture a low quality scan of the hotel room. But on to what we're here, props for avatars. How can you make avatar props? Find something good to take pictures of. Here is my camera. It's always fun to 3D scan the thing you use to 3D scan things. That's always challenging. And here, I wanted to get every angle of my camera, so I did something a little challenging. I put it down on a white sheet, instead of just having it set down on a table, because you'll capture the table too if you try that. And I just rotated the camera. I had another camera on a tripod and just took pictures that way. And you can see I've actually made a mistake here. I forgot to fix the white balance on my camera. So every time I took a picture, the background, which was a white sheet, was a slightly different color. Frequently it was bright white, but other times it was a gray, it was a dark gray, or kind of a violet. You can correct those in post, say if you know how to use Adobe Lightroom or Darktable. It's a lot of work, and your scan will probably come out just fine anyways. So the next step was I fed the photos through some software. It found all the similar elements in them, matched them up, and generated my camera. The text is very crisp. It's a very high resolution model. And the body color is a little off because, again, I didn't set the white balance on I forgot to set the white balance on my camera to manual. But despite that, there was a lot of pictures and all the textures got averaged together, so it still looks pretty good. It could look better, but it looks pretty good. To get started doing this, you'll need some kind of camera. You can use a phone with a camera, or you can use a camera. Phone cameras are fantastic. I love them. I might make fun of them sometimes, but as far as wonderful pieces of technology go, they're great. It's a tiny little sensor and a lot of software and a teeny itty bitty little lens, and they will rarely take a terrible photo. You'll get a usable photo out of them every time because that's what they're supposed to be. They're convenient. You just want to get the moment. It doesn't matter if it's great. They also will almost never take a great picture. That's where a camera comes in. A DSLR or a mirrorless camera will have a much larger sensor, much larger lenses, and they'll take much better pictures because of that. You also have to know how to use a camera to use them. Once you've taken your pictures with your device, you'll need something to process them. Either a computer. You don't need an especially fast computer. It helps. You'll need a computer with adequate cooling because the software can overwork your system sometimes for days, depending on how fast it is or how many pictures you took. Make sure it can stay cool. And if you don't want to bother with that, you can use a 3D scanning service through a web browser or a phone app. Most phone apps are just they're just a portal to a website anyways. For phone apps, my favorite is Polycam. The quality is always improving. Next up is Luma AI. The whole AI thing, it adds something maybe. I'll talk about it later. It has a killer feature I'll also talk about later. RTAB map runs locally on your phone, no cloud needed. The quality is okay. It's also free and open source. It runs on Windows too. You can take really great scans with your Kinect, and they're really fast, and it's good. Reality Scan, I really haven't tried it yet, but it's by the people who made Reality Capture, and that is the best photogrammetry software. But also, there's just a lot of different phone apps. There's tons. I can't even try all of them. For PC software, if you're not going to use your phone or a phone app, there's Metashape. Metashape is my favorite. That's mostly because I've just learned how it behaves. I've used it a lot. I know that if I take my pictures a certain way, I'll get good results. I know that if I'm doing something a little weird, if I do it just right this way, I'll still get good results. The quality isn't as good as Reality Capture, but I know how to use it, and that's what matters. Knowing how to use your tools is what works. Don't play favorites here. Use what works. Reality Capture is the best. That's it. It's the best. The interface is a little hostile to use. There's a coin slot, metaphorical coin slot. You got to keep pumping money into to make it work. At least you have the coin slot now. You used to have to be a corporation with thousands of dollars to get the privilege of buying a 1-month license for it. But you can 3D scan a tree at a distance, and it will recreate every single leaf on that tree. It's phenomenal. And then there's Mushroom. I use Mushroom a lot starting out, and it's really intended for people with extremely fast computers with giant hard drives or access to render farms who will compile the software to run on a render farm. It takes a lot of finagling. It is difficult to use. I can't overstate that. It's hard. But if you are an expert and in one of the steps in the photogrammetry process is I need to adjust the lambda delta value in the structure from motion node. You can just adjust that value. It won't bother telling you what that value does. You'll have to read the source code to find out. But that's what it's geared for. So I'd really recommend starting out just to use Metashape and like put it at low quality. Lastly, you will need patience. Seriously. Patience either waiting for the data to process, or more likely patience having to retake your photos because you didn't take them right. Or fixing your photos because you can't take them again. It's time consuming, it can be frustrating, maybe you have to wait a day to see if what you tried worked. It's a learning process, and it's worth it. So, once you have the proper equipment, you need to find something that can be 3D scanned. A lot of issues I've seen are someone finds something they want to 3D scan, and it's like the worst possible object. In the worst possible environment, or it's just one or the other. So what works? Outside works. Outside works. Windy days aren't great because stuff moves around a lot, and you need things to stay still to photoscan them. But you can't do better than a bright, overcast day. Outside, a clear sky, the sun will color everything, kind of it'll be subtly yellower. The colors will be brighter and they'll pop more. And what if you're making a horror game and you're 3D scanning something? It's going to look bright and happy in your horror game, and it's very hard to get rid of that. A cloudy sky will put down even gray lighting, uncolored, not as bright as it could be, but it looks great in any scenario. It's not biased towards anything, and there are shadows out in the world, but they are a smooth transition from just a brighter area to a slightly darker area. There's no hard lines that you get from a clear sky. So what scans well? Rocks scan well. That rock scans super well, and I only got a couple pictures of it. That tree root system scanned super well. I only got a couple pictures of it. It's detailed. You can see the individual twigs in it. That skull, the antlers, and some of the cracks in it scanned well. The skull is just the rest of it is a uniform color. But the picnic table I put it on is made out of wood, and wood has a lot of variation in it. And that allowed the software to pick up on the shape of the skull, and it worked really good. So, natural rock, not polished stone, natural stone, wood grain, like boards or a particle board, anything like that with a lot of variation in it, the software will find, lock into, it'll work. And then surfaces with lots of color, and not just like a bright color, one color. I mean like a poster, a painting. Mom back home, she has this big Georgia O'Keeffe coffee table book. Georgia O'Keeffe makes a great 3D scanning platform. Also, her artwork is beautiful. That's good too. What is okay or not good or bad? Glass and glossy surfaces. The problem with glass is it's transparent. Light goes right through it. So your software can't see it. And if there's a light source, the sun, a light bulb anywhere nearby, there's glare on it, and glare will change shape every time you move. It'll in the movement and the inconsistency is very bad. Oh, it's the same with gloss. Again, the glare will change shape every time you take a picture, and those parts of your object will just not be there. What's also bad are trees on windy days, because your software will see the leaves and it will individually recreate all of them. But then if it's windy, they'll be moving and it'll recreate many more of them, and it'll just be a bunch of blobs. It'll chew through your poly budget. It'll increase your processing time. It's a mess. Windy days are just bad. And the worst thing are beige walls. Beige is the worst. So over here is my apartment. This is when I first leased it. because when you lease a new apartment, the first thing you should do is take a couple pictures of it to make sure that it's all intact, you're recording the damages. And then you should quickly get on to packing because you probably don't have a lot of time to move in. You shouldn't take a couple hours, an hour and a half, to take 500 pictures of it to create a 3D model replica of your apartment. So in here, and I was pretty aware that this was going to happen, the floor, that fake wood floor I'm standing on right now in that same area in that picture, has a wood texture. Came out great. The ceiling is this awful stippled popcorny texture. It's supposed to help with noise. That came out great. It's not just a uniform color. The outlets, the thermostat, the light switches, the doors came out great. But the actual walls, just one uniform color? No. No, they did not. It's the whole place looks like it's made out of a cheese. So you can go in and manually reconstruct those. Like, I know there's a wall there, so I say in Blender, a 3D modeling tool, I can just add a plane there. I can carve out all the stuff that doesn't work and add in a nice surface that will, and then reprocess the model, and it'll get updated and look much better. Shadows are also not great. They'll be in your models. Areas of your models will be darker. They're hard to get rid of. There's some tools to try and do it. A Geosoft D lighter is one of them. It's okay. It's better to take them right the first time. And what's really bad are dark rooms. You've got a room in your place that has a light bulb. It's darker than you think. At least darker compared to how you can see it as compared to how your camera can see it. Our eyes are fantastic at seeing in low light compared to our technology right now, and that's also just kind of a physics problem. So another thing are sunbeams, shadows moving, because if you're outside scanning a building and you take a while, the earth will move. It'll look like the sun will move in the sky, the shadows will move, and you'll get many copies of those shadows in your model, and it won't look good. Another thing that totally ruins room scans are bright exteriors with your dark interior. So every time you take a picture, your camera analyzes the scene quickly and adjusts all sorts of settings, white balance, exposure. And that's what happened in these two pictures. The bright one is, it's a hotel, but inside the hotel it had this giant atrium, and it's kind of dark inside despite it being bright outside. The windows were very dirty. And my camera analyzed the scene, and it decided that outside should be super bright and inside should be normal. The next picture I took, it came up with a different opinion. And no, I didn't put my camera in manual, of course. I was new at the time. And so the outside was totally normal and the inside was very dark. I had to yank this picture from the scan because it just wouldn't work. So, using an app. Oh, you play the other video. All right, this app is called Luma AI, and well, the results, at least in this case, weren't the best. I'm showing this because of its killer feature. I don't know how much the AI aspect of it actually adds. It just seems like it adds an extra step where it turns all the pictures you have into a nerf, and that makes the pixels kind of fuzzy. But what really makes it good, I bet, is this. You tell it the shape of the area, and it gives you these 3 rings. They're superimposed on your phone screen, and you follow them around. It makes you follow them. It will take a picture for you when you're correctly lined up and you're not moving your phone too much. And it makes you get good angles, good pictures at all angles, all over the object you're doing. It makes you give it good data so it can give you good results afterwards. To be honest, I'd recommend trying this app a couple times, even if the quality isn't what you want, even if you don't upload later, because this will show you how you should be taking pictures. That's another common mistake I see when people ask me, how can I improve this? It's more pictures, you're missing angles. Like, run the images and see where you're missing pictures from, and this will help you figure out that better. Oh, and then after you're done, the app process is the same for basically all of them. Really, they're all very, very similar. Then you got to upload to a web service, and you just kind of wait. This scan took about an hour to process. That's pretty typical in my experience. So you wait. Maybe it's done in 5 minutes. Maybe it's done in a day. And then you get to see the results. And these are the results from Polycam. Again, I'm not going to show a video of Polycam because except for the augmented reality guide, it's exactly the same. You just wave your phone around and it takes pictures for you. So here's the mask. The textures are crisp and clear. It captured the inside of the nose. There's a lot of detail, and it looks good. It's also about 30,000 polys, which is a little high for VR chat. But I'll get to what you do after that. This is the results from Polycam, the video you saw. They're not as good. The textures are a little blurrier, and inside of the nose is just not there. And also, as you can see, there's in the lower right, there's some weird glitches going on with the polygons down there. It's not very clean. I'm not sure what went on. But if this is a prop for your avatar, you don't want the park bench or anything else in there, and you need to clean up the model so it's just the mask. And your choices for doing that in apps are extremely limited. That's just the nature of it right now. Maybe they'll get better. But for the moment, both Polycam and Luma AI just give you the option to use a cube or maybe a cylinder to crop out the object. That's all the editing you get. And that's fine if you plan out your scan. Here, I planned out what I was doing. I put my object, even though it was very textured and colorful, so it would scan well. I put it on a park bench because that's outside, and again, the wood really helps. I also put it on that cutting mat. The real reason I had it on the cutting mat was because it was flat. The cutting mat also has a grid in centimeters, so I could scale it to real-world units if I wanted to. But again, it's because it's flat, so I was able to take the cropping cube and get it very close to the edge of the mask and just save as much as possible. And then you kind of let it process, and there you go. There's the mask. It looks good. The next step is, because this is in the cloud, you have to get it on your computer. I first tried an FBX export and it didn't work. I inspected the file and it was just empty. It was full of zeros. There's nothing I can do about that. The web service didn't work. I have no control over it. But the OBJ export worked great. And when I dropped that into Unity, I had a low poly model of the mask. I had a texture map for it. I also had a normal map for it and a diffuse map. You add those into your object, into your material render in Unity, and it'll look much better in many more game environments. It's great. So because apps are just usually websites with a different interface, Polycam and Luma AI both have a web interface. And I've been having a lot of fun rerunning my past 3D scans. I just take all my photos and just kind of shove them into Firefox. And my camera scan went in. I've had issues with some of my other photo sets where Polycam just kind of does nothing if it has more than 100 pictures to work with. I don't know why. There's nothing I can do about it. It won't do it. So on the right, that's my camera. But it's what Polycam did with it, and it came out good. The other one is what Luma AI did, and this is the AI step going wrong. So Luma AI will take it'll take your images and turn them into something called a nerf. I'm not going to go into what it is, but it kind of interpolates the betweenness. If you take two pictures, it can give you an image between them. It uses AI, neural networks, whatever. It kind of works. And it only likes them if they're formatted in a specific way. So my camera's in there somewhere, probably screaming. It couldn't handle the images. So that's a scenario when you need more control, or Maybe Polycam just spits out a specific level of detail and you want less detail. Or what if you want way more detail than you'll get with the app, and you just couldn't take your pictures in the correct way? This is when you use traditional software. So one night, again, staying at a hotel for work, I wanted to 3D scan something, and I decided to 3D scan my dinner. And, okay, here's a little secret. I actually processed this at home because the hotel Wi-Fi was way too slow to upload the images to Polycam. But Polycam gave me a blob. I don't really have any settings to adjust to maybe make this work. It just works or it doesn't work. So here's where traditional photogrammetry non-app based comes into play. You take your pictures. This graphic is great. It tells you a lot without giving any away. So, but if you're using a phone camera, really don't worry about it. If you're using a normal camera, I'm going to suggest set your aperture so just the object is in focus. Let that nice blur in the background and the foreground. Just keep that stuff from showing up in your scan. I found that letting the ISO be a bit higher than you'd be comfortable with is better than having the shutter speed really, really long, because then your hands are going to shake and the picture will be blurry. Better to sacrifice that. And if you're using a zoom lens, well, all of my zoom lenses have strips of blue painter's tape on them so I can lock them in place, because don't adjust the zoom. It's really important. So this is how you feed a computer a burger. I'll take a bunch of pictures. In my hotel room, I didn't have enough space to move around, to rotate around the burger. So I just held my camera in one place and took pictures of it. Then I fed it into Metashape. You just drag and drop your pictures in. And then you click on the Align Images button and it aligns them. I've sped up this video in a few places just to save time here. I did it on low quality because I knew that would work best. Food is kind of hard for it to work with. And right away, about half the pictures have aligned properly. The software I tricked it into thinking I actually physically rotated around my burger. But you can see that clump there. They weren't fooled. So the desk in the hotel room had this fake wood texture, and the software loved that. It loved finding that way more than the burger. And there's a few things you can do about that. My least favorite thing that I have to do a lot is making image masks. I love making image masks. This took about 20 minutes for 50 photos. I was going fast because my food was cooling down. And otherwise it can be a great way to spend a weekend just after you've had an exciting photo shoot to make image masks instead. But it masks out stuff you don't want the software to see. So we're just going to retry it, having masked out the wood desk in all of the pictures. And that's perfect. Yeah, the software, it aligned all the pictures correctly where they should have been. And now we can just clean it up a little bit. And we can also shrink down our reconstruction box, so we don't need to reconstruct the entire table. That doing a smaller region will save time. Next up is the build mesh step. And this is where a lot of the software needs like a NVIDIA GPU. Metashape is great. It can run just on your CPU with no fancy GPU, but it can also use an AMD GPU. It's great. And this usually takes a while. And when it's done, there we go. There's the burger. It's violet. And you can see all the crinkles on the bun. You can see the ridges in the pickles. The fries are definitely a pile of fries. There's some weird polygons on the edges that we're not gonna worry about too much. Well, then you can texture it. And this is a high quality texture. That mesh is also way too high quality for a Unity prop for VR chat. That mesh is like 50,000 polygons. That's most of an avatar. So what you do then is, and look at that texture. Looks delicious. It's high quality. You can see all the little variation in the fries. You'll want to clean up your models a little bit before you do again. I just use the in-editor tools that save me a trip back to Blender. Next up, that's a 50,000 polygon model. You should decimate it and reduce the poly count. I dropped it down to 1,500, which probably subtracted too much detail, but it still looks great. And it's very performant. It will run great on everyone's computer. Then you rebuild your texture again, and the burger bun still looks good. The pickles still look fantastic. I lost a little bit of detail in the fries. Again, maybe I dropped the poly count too much. But it's good. Looks tasty. And then afterwards, because if you know anything about making models in 3D, we can take our high resolution model that we never got rid of. We can bake a normal map for it, and that'll recreate and recapture a lot of that detail we just sacrificed. And when we view our normal map, it looks purple. But you can see those bun crinkles are back. They were gone and they're back now. And this is where I think I dropped the detail a little too much. The ridges and the pickles are gone. The fries are a little ugly. It can take some time to optimize and get the settings just right. But we can also make an occlusion map, which will make it look even better in our game engine. And then you wait. Waiting is the best part of 3D scanning. I like to do anything else when I'm waiting for my scans to finish. And there we go. So this will help, say, the bun crinkles and beneath the pile of fries look a bit darker, like they should, like they actually did when you took the scan. And the results? Okay, there's also a Q&A in the Discord. I've been reminded to remind you about that. So, over there, we have the one we made in Metashape. It looks great. And over there, that's after I used one of the few settings that Polycam gave me. It looks identical to the high resolution burger that we made first before we scaled down the detail a little bit. Maybe Polycam made the colors pop a bit more, or maybe it was just my web browser changing and making the colors look a bit brighter. I'm not sure. But one is 1,500 polygons, the other is 50,000 polygons, and you want to use the lower detail one for VR chat. So it's over! I would like to thank myself for giving this panel. I'd also like to thank my friend Ramajo for letting me use 3D scans of her in my panel. I'd also like to thank my mom for painting that mask. She has a habit of, I'll give her a 3D print, and she'll just give it back to me, painted. Below that are links to the softwares discussed, Polycam, Luma AI, and Metashape. And if anyone would like to come up, we've got our mask, and we've got our burger over here, if you want to have a look or have a taste. Oh geez, no need to non-rush the stage, come on. Oh. And any questions? If you could read off some questions for me, that'd be great.
Hello, hello. We have our first question from Red Reinhardt saying, are all of these photo scanner pay for services? How do you actually get your scanned objects?
That's going to depend on the service. If it's an app, then you're going to have to download it out of the cloud somehow. Or in Polycam, Polycam will also do local processing on your phone, and they make you pay a fee to download them, to just download the actual, FBX. Then you can upload it into Google Drive or something like that. It depends on the one. If you're using a PC app, they'll just have an export button. You can export it to a number of different object types.
We have another question here from Kahek. They ask, is it possible to also scan, air quotes, objects from video games as a sort of alternative to ripping them from the game files?
Absolutely. You can absolutely do that. You might have a bit of weirdness because there's always a step in the software where they correct for lens distortion with your camera lens. That might get a little weird, but otherwise you can totally do that. I know there's a project using photogrammetry to recreate mist. That old what was it? It was built in, was it Apple HyperCard, I think, something like that. And so they're taking all those screenshots and running it through photogrammetry software to get the very accurate placement of, say, vases on a table. So then in a different 3D modeling program, they can put those vases back on in the same spot in the table in the same room.
We have another question from Red Iron with, would a photography light box be suitable for taking these photos?
Yes! Yes! I own one. I don't own any real photography lights, but I did go to a hardware store and buy some floodlights to point at my light box. My recommendation for doing that is put your camera on a tripod and move it as little as possible. And then just pump that box full of light from all sides, obviously, to evenly illuminate everything. And then just reach in, rotate your object a couple degrees every time. Leave, take another picture, and repeat. The reason you don't want to move your camera is the software is going to see and recognize the light box itself. It's really hard to get it to not do that, but there's options. You can either mask out the light box, and that's much easier to do if you always know where it is. It's never changing position. Or, say in Metashape, there's an option to ignore stationary tie points. So that just means anything in the scene that doesn't change, it's going to ignore in its final result.
We have another question from Snow Miser asking, does phototelemetry work all right with splitting up a video rather than photos?
Yes. Video, I found, is the only way to affordably capture a person. Whether that person is just T-posing for you or doing a dance, as you saw earlier. Yeah, you know what? I can peel back to those slides of my friend Ramajo at Eurofurence. And that's how I did those, actually. So she stood very still. She stood very still. And I had my camera it has a very wide angle lens. And I've set it to take video at a very high shutter speed. That was actually something she taught me. She does cinematography, and she said, no. All those video frames will be kind of blurry. Anyways. Then you take a couple orbits around them. You got to go really fast, because, I mean, have you ever tried to stand perfectly statue still? You can't do it. You're going to move a little bit. So keep the scan under 30 seconds if you can before people's arms get tired. Orbit around them and then use a piece of software to extract the video frames out of your video. I like to use FFmpeg because it's complicated and I understand it. But otherwise, some software, especially Luma AI, you can just feed a 4K video to. In fact, Luma AI likes it if you take your pictures and format them so that they have the same resolution as a 4K video. The whole AI thing has been trained on 4K video. That's what it likes best. Then just, process the images normally. There's usually an option to tick for sequential pictures, so the software knows each picture comes immediately after the other one, and there's also going to be a significant amount of overlap picture to picture. Overlap is extremely important. That's why the apps, at least Luma AI, has that guide where it makes you get like 90% overlap from every angle before it'll take another picture for you. And that's what's good about video. Again, just the overlap. So yes, you can totally do that. Videogrammetry is totally a thing. It's situational. The models are going to be lower quality. The textures will be a little bit blurrier. But as far as speed goes, yes. And yes, you can totally 3D scan things in movies as long as you can get the people out of them. It's great.
The audience is very enamored with your burger, and they have to know what kind of burger it was.
Okay. This was a burger that the hotel restaurant made. It's a cheeseburger. It had some kind of sauce on it. That's all I really know. It was heavy, and it was great after a long, frustrating day in a loud factory installing equipment.
Burger. We have another question from Red Reynard. What are your thoughts on 3D scanners such as Revo Point 3D? Are there any scanners that you use?
I haven't heard of that one, but I bet you're talking about those 3D scan appliances where they have maybe a couple cameras built into them, and they connect to your computer over USB. My experience is I work in industrial. I do industrial automation, and I've seen some very expensive, high quality 3D scanners, and it's still pretty iffy how well they work. The surface has got to be right. Actually, usually what happens is the software isn't very good and it just crashes, so it doesn't work. And when the software is good, I've only heard people say frustrating things about them. I remember I was at a convention and someone had one of those, and we had a great time 3D scanning fursuiters, and they couldn't go as fast. They got their results immediately, but they couldn't go as fast. Again, the app was kind of bad. Your mileage would vary. I haven't had any good luck with any of those personally, but I haven't tried a lot. I've seen them on Kickstarter and on Amazon and just kind of decided to pass, because usually I'll see that they have a fairly low resolution camera. And that's really, or the camera isn't globally shuttered, or just it's a lot of stuff. So that's, yeah, I can't say much. If it's convenience you're looking for, that's going to be it. Hopefully they're not tied to any web service that'll get shut down later. Or, an OS upgrade will just make it so they don't work, because that data format they use is proprietary to them. It's one of the reasons why I use pictures, because, well, I was able to get my hands on a decent camera. I started out with a poor phone camera, but I can still rerun those scans later. They're just images I can feed to anything. So it's situational. If it works for your workflow, that's most important. Mine works for me. That's what I tend to discuss. If that's not for you, then don't do it. Use what works for you. That's what's important. Oh, I can't recommend any single one, though. I know some architecture students who hate them, but that's it.
We have one last question here as we near the end of our time. The question comes from Ubicon, and they ask, are there any tools to automate the masking process? And that they dislike manual masking.
Oh, man, I love masking out trees. It's so good. On a windy day, I just love drawing black boxes around all those trees, or masking out the sky. It's so great. Oh, it's the best way to spend an afternoon on Saturday. So good. So a lot of times I just use, you're going to hate this, but I just use the magic wand tool, or I just draw polygons in the software. But also, I've heard good things about the Adobe Content Aware Flood Fill tool. I saw a great article where someone had 3D scanned one of the last sequences, the maze sequence from The Shining, and they had used the Content Aware Flood Fill to flood fill the humans in each scene with just black blobs. And those are typically pretty bad to do, but if you know what you're doing, it's totally fine. The software is looking for consistency, so in your scan, if a person walks through it, it's fine as long as they don't stand in one place for too long. You don't get two pictures of them in the same place, they won't show up. I scanned an entire beach, and there are no humans in it, and it was crowded, but no humans in the scan because nobody stood still. You can take advantage of that, but, anyways. Those content-aware flood fills that just replaced the humans with black blobs were different every frame, so your photogrammetry software didn't see it. That's all I can really say for that. Otherwise, I don't know. Get good with the magic wand tool, or figure out how that, selective AI scissor tool works. All right, so that's how to make avatar props. I love making these. It's nice having something my mom painted in VR with me. It's really sweet. And I can't wait to see what you guys make. I love exploring 3D scan worlds. It's my favorite thing to do. Thank you for all being here today. I love doing these. Bye!